Welcome everybody to today's episode of the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. My name is Dr. Melanie Jackson at Melanie the Midwife. I'm a clinical and research midwife with my PhD. Our Great Birth Rebellion premium members also get access to podcast transcripts, additional resources, the Ask Mel a Question button, and an exclusive monthly Ask Me Anything episode. That said, let's get into it. Welcome everybody to today's episode of the Great Birth Rebellion podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melanie Jackson, and today I'm joined again by my guest, Sarah Smits. We heard from her in the last episode. Today we are talking about what Sarah learnt in Guatemala. What led you to Guatemala? Why did you go there?
How did I end up in Guatemala? So Guatemala was the first country I ever traveled to. So I shared in that last episode that I've been backpacking since I was 21. So for many years now, 13 years, and had a really influential experience there that just stayed with me. And I wanted to deepen my knowledge of working with the body now that I had been doing some massage that I'd learned in India. And I'd always been intrigued by something called Mayan abdominal massage. It is an extremely deep form of massage, working on the abdomen. You're really working on the energy centers. It's not just like a physical alignment. It's a physical and energetic and spiritual alignment that's actually performed on anyone, men, women, and children, to support a range of different issues, but it's particularly great for preconception and postpartum, working with the womb. And I just happened to be in Austria at the time with my family. So I was spending some time with them and my visa was about to run out. And I had randomly on Instagram been followed by a page which is called the Midwife Project. And this one really aligned with me because it's extremely grassroots. It's run by the midwives themselves. And the intention is about supporting the conservation of traditional midwifery knowledge, whilst also recognizing that traditional midwives also want more clinical knowledge and clinical midwifery skills. And it just really, sparked my interest. And I started talking to someone who is a dear friend now who ran the page. And she said, well, the midwives are actually teaching a Mayan abdominal massage course in 2 weeks. You can stay at my house. Do you want to come? And I was like, oh, okay. How am I going to get to Guatemala in 2 weeks? It just seemed like just such a far out idea at the time. And also I need to add that this was also during COVID and they did have restrictions on entering the country. So I don't know. I'm just going to trust. And I couldn't fly in directly to Guatemala itself. So I had to fly to Mexico. And I took about 30 pieces of public transport, local chicken buses. After not having had any exposure to any Spanish speaking for a really long time, I didn't even have a phone with a SIM card. I just had to be like, name of a place on a piece of paper, full trust mode to get to Guatemala. And I arrived one day before the course started. So I thought I would just be there for the week to do the course. Instead, I followed a calling and ended up in Guatemala and stayed there for 4.5 months in this little community. It's a week-long teaching of Mayan abdominal massage. And within that training, I learned the stories of the Mayan midwives. I learned that they see midwifery as a calling, that they learn a lot of their knowledge and wisdom through dreams. And this was something in particular that I really resonated with because it's something that I had also been told by traditional midwives in Cambodia when I was connecting with them there. I've since learned that that's a very common thing, and that's how most Mayan midwives learn their knowledge, and a lot of traditional midwives around the world. But also in this training, we learned a lot about working with plants. And so I deepened my knowledge of working with plants. We did yoni steaming and working a lot, connecting with the fire as a spiritual tool, sitting in ceremony with the midwives, working with the faja, which is the belly binding that they use in Guatemala, and the traditional steam lodges, which is called a temescal, which we do massage inside the sweat lodge, plant baths inside the lodge. It's literally like a little womb that you're entering back into. So really incredible healing takes place in these spaces. And I'll share a little bit more on the practice and the benefits in postpartum maybe a little later on. Yeah. But yeah, I did this week-long training. Then I just stayed around and stayed connected with the midwives who ran the training. And at that time, they were initiating the start of the Midwife Project. It was just a dream, and they were just coming together and collaborating, and they were having a meeting about it every 20 days. So they work very closely with the Mayan calendar and very intentionally. So you do certain things on certain days because that's the energy that you want to be working with. So every 20 days in the Mayan calendar comes up the day of Kawok, and Kawok is the day of the midwife. So if a baby is born and she's a girl, she's either born in Kol or on the day of Kawok, then she's destined to be a midwife. So every 20 days, the midwives were gathering, discussing their aims for the project and how they envisioned it, but also that they were communicating with the fire to see if they were getting the support that they needed to go ahead. I got invited to attend these meetings with the midwives, and there was a time where I had a space to share of why I thought what they were doing is so important. They are told that, the medical system is better, all the hospitals are better, they know more. This happens around the world, but particularly in Guatemala, pretty much tells the general population like not to use the traditional midwives because they are unskilled, they don't have the knowledge, they haven't gone to school, they don't have the equipment that is needed, and they try and get all the women to come to either the health post or the hospitals to birth. So socially, it's really challenging for the traditional midwives, and a lot of them actually live in poverty because their work is not valued anymore. That's why I was so drawn to want to support them, because I said, you don't want to go in the direction that we're going. We're trying to get back to where you are. We're trying to remember our traditional practices, and we don't have the elders anymore to learn from. Like, your knowledge and what you know is so important. It needs to be preserved. And also recognizing that they do want to learn the skills and knowledge, like the clinical training of midwifery, because they also recognize that birth is becoming more challenging. They have, some of the midwives have been midwives for 40 years, and they're really seeing how things are shifting and changing. So they want to learn. So it kind of turned into this situation where they asked me to share some like clinical skills with some of them. Most importantly, like, they see midwifery as a spiritual practice. So being able to like witness that and see the importance and be taught in these ways has completely like transformed my own practice as well. So I left Guatemala after 4.5 months, but it has been an ongoing connection that I've maintained. So I've been back again, and I'm going back again very soon in order to keep it as like a reciprocal kind of like relationship where I can continue to support them. If you come to one of my events, like 10% of my total sales always goes back to supporting the project as well. Like, if you're on my social media, I'm always sharing like quite a lot about the project and how you can support them and the incredible work that they're doing.
What does the project aim to do in Guatemala?
It's a preservation of traditional wisdom. So they are wanting to like record the stories of the midwives. They want to be able to support the midwives in a way that their work is valued again. I'm sharing a conference piece. It is online as well already. I've done it for the Virtual International Day of the Midwife. I presented at ICM, and I'm presenting at the Home Birth Conference the same piece. So it really goes into the intentions of the project, what they need support with and what their aims are and things like this, and shares a little bit about the work that they do. Ultimately, it is a preservation of the traditional knowledge. It is recognizing that within their own country, their work is not valued anymore. So trying to support a revaluing of the work that they do. I share in that piece as well that one of the midwives told me that for a birth and for all the antenatal care, for all of the traditional, like extensive postpartum care, including the temazcals and the ceremony and the massaging of the woman and the baby, maybe they get paid between $5 and $60 for the entirety of that care. They even shared that sometimes when they come to a birth, they're not even offered a glass of water from the birthing family. There's no valuing of this incredible wisdom and support, which is also very like spiritual and energetic support as well, that they provide to their communities. But also they are looking after some of the poorest women. They are looking after the Indigenous, the Mayan women who really are living in poverty themselves. In a way, trying to also bring additional income to the midwives so they can sustain their practice as midwives as well.
What did you teach them when you went? And then I'd be really keen to know what they taught you that you now use in your practice.
So the things that they asked me were about cannulation, suturing, And because they have been, as part of one of the programs, they run a program called the Empowerment Through Education. It's a 6-month like training program. And at the end of the program, they get given a midwifery kit. But inside the kit, they had things like Dopplers. So I just taught them more about like actually how to utilize a Doppler. So it's all good and well giving someone a Doppler, but if you don't understand what you're looking for, then it's kind of no use. We did a little bit of fetal positioning things, how to determine the position of a baby on a vaginal exam, just any sort of clinical skills that they feel like that they would like to know. There is government trainings in Guatemala, but what the government has done is they've pretty much said, like, if you don't attend these trainings, you don't have your license. Therefore, if you practice, it's illegal and we can put you in jail. So threatening the midwives if they don't come to these trainings. And the feedback that I'm getting of what they're being taught there is like pretty minimal, if anything at all. Yeah, so they've had other people come and teach them as well. Also shared an important workshop on how to, they were taught how to sort of like manage a postpartum hemorrhage at home or how to avoid one, but with the use of syntocinon, which they don't have access to and they don't know how to administer. Yes. So I just kind of, I shared something after that as a kind of like, yes, this was great information that we learned, but it's not applicable to all of you because you don't work in clinical settings. So I can share what I know about how we try and avoid a hemorrhage or how we manage or how to safely transfer a woman if this has occurred because you're living in rural and remote areas, particularly because like hospitals aren't so accessible. So being able to like avoid a hemorrhage or stabilize a woman before transfer is a more applicable skill than telling them to administer drugs that they don't have. I don't go there projecting like what I think that they should know. I just ask them what they want to know and then I share.
What did you learn from them that you're now using in your practice?
So the last time I went back, I attended a retreat and she had one particular family of midwives come and teach us their traditional midwifery practices. So what I'm learning with them mostly is like connection and how to do things with intention. So when you deepen your connection to yourself, to your practice, to the woman, to Mother Earth, to different energies, then you're more in tune with your skills as a midwife. A lot of people would resonate with this, especially when we work outside of the hospital setting and we're constantly having to tap into our intuition. You know, we have to trust those feelings. Like, where do those feelings come from? So I really learned like how to refine those. In order to do that, they work with the Mayan calendar, working with the energies of the day. They work with the sacred fire and giving offerings to the fire. They work with tobacco. So they do a lot of kind of like that energetic and spiritual support in order to support the health and well-being of the woman and baby during the pregnancy and the birth and postpartum. So when I was kind of like quizzing them on like, okay, if a woman has a high blood pressure or if this happens or if this happens, like what would you do? And ultimately their response pretty much every time was like, we would do ceremony. And that could be, you know, working with the fire, but also utilizing the temescal, plant baths inside the temescal, massaging the woman. It made sense. Like I saw in India, actually, there was a woman who previously had preeclampsia. We were doing like some other work as well, but she was receiving massages like really regularly during her pregnancy and she didn't have high blood pressure in that pregnancy at all. You know, massaging helps align the uterus. It helps, you know, make the space for the baby. It relieves those pregnancy discomforts. It actually is like makes sense on a very physical level as well.
I remember when I was pregnant with my first baby, we were building a house and we were temporarily living with my parents and I was pregnant. And I was in bed one day just being pregnant and suffering from something. And my mum was leaving the house and I said, Mum, there are some communities that massage the women, pregnant women, every day, you know, as a bit of a like cooey to like, hey, can you just help me? She said, why don't you go and live in those villages then? She said it. And I was like, oh, man, like we know this, but the practicalities of getting massaged every day are just, you know, in our culture so unfortunately inaccessible. You know, it's obviously a type of massage. They're skilled in this. They pass on that information to each other. And so is that what you learnt, their style of massage?
It is a type, but it's also kind of not in regards to, it's called Mayan abdominal massage, but it's not one thing. Every single midwife and every single family are going to do something different. Even when actually I was with the traditional midwives in Cambodia, they also did it. You know, I've also watched documentaries of like Indigenous midwives in Australia doing it. Like massaging the belly is a normal part of the midwife skill set. For me, what I recognize is when I'm touching a woman's body and when I'm massaging her belly during her pregnancy, I'm getting so much information. I'm getting information about the baby. I'm connecting with the baby. I'm also forming a relationship with the baby. And, you're checking in with the well-being of the baby, the size, how reactive the baby is. You're feeling the alignment of the uterus. You're helping her relieve any pregnancy discomforts. But when you have hands-on contact with a woman during pregnancy, your relationship with her really changes. It really softens, and that trust is really there. And then when it comes to birth, then how she feels about hands-on touch. And she's experienced your hands-on touch before. When you're doing ceremony or plant bath or things like this, like a lot of those kind of like deep emotional stories like arise and come up. So you're deepening your connection with the woman. So it has a lot of different benefits that sort of like come in as well. And then in that, I utilize working with the robozo as well. And then binding of the belly, which we'll go into as well, which is a really beautiful practice.
So yes, we will do belly binding in the next episode. Can you share with us a little bit about what you learned about robozo? Because when I first started in midwifery, robozo was a fancy word and everyone was like, oh, I've got to get a robozo and learn how to do robozo. And then partway through my career, it became a bit of a dirty word. Where are we at with robozo and what do you know about it?
Yeah, I use the term robozo because like I do source my scarves from Mexico and they are referred to as robozos. But ultimately, it is a piece of material that is utilized in regards to pregnancy and labor and birth and postpartum to manipulate the body of the woman, whether that's with intention to provide comfort, to relieve any pain, whether that's with the intention to make the space to allow the baby to turn into the position that it needs to turn, whether you're quite physically like binding and holding the baby in a particular position to ensure it's aligned in the pelvis, or in postpartum, whether you're binding the belly or carrying your baby. I see these different modalities or the same modality with different names practiced across the world. So midwives have always massaged women's bellies or jiggled women's bodies or, done something that they can help to bear down on during labor and birth. What I find is that like we all have the same intention. It's just we are very resourceful in regards to the tools that we use to get there. So robozo is, I guess it's a term that like is also like more widely known now. It does come from Mexico as we kind of most commonly know it. But if you actually trace back the history of a robozo, it actually was brought to Mexico in the Spanish invasion from the Spaniards, and the Spaniards got it from the Arabs. And I've also been in Vanuatu, and there the women use sarong. So it's all about the intention of what you're doing, why you're doing it. Because if you're doing something for the sake of like, oh, now I offer robozo and it's something that you do without the connection and intention, then that's not an appropriate way to work with it. But it can be a really incredible midwifery tool that can be extremely supportive to women and birth, especially if you're avoiding interventions. And in regards to like cultural appropriation, the way that my teachers in Guatemala share, they say, if you know about something, you don't appropriate it because you honor and you respect it. And I really, truly believe that. The ways that I've learned robozo, I've learned with Noli Vinova, who is a like traditional Mexican midwife who she's actually coming back to Australia next year to teach again. She's an incredible teacher, and she as well will teach you how to work with the robozo with intention. And that's also how I share about it as well. I share about the weaving, and I share about what is woven into the threads, and I share about why that's important and the energy that carries. I share that you don't just do these things for the sake of doing them. If you don't know what you're doing, you're potentially like doing something that is counterproductive for the woman. But when you deeply understand these ways of working, you can work with it with great intention. And I want to share as well, like the Mayan midwives, they don't work with the robozo. They work with the faja, which is just the belly binding, and they work more with massage. The ways I mostly utilize it is within my body work. So I do a lot of pelvic balancing during pregnancy. So women come to me also if their babies are breech or if their babies are kind of in some like funky positions. I work with the robozo as an extension of my hands. So I feel a lot through the robozo because I'm like deeply connected to the threads. And when I'm rocking a woman's body, I'm feeling misalignment in her pelvis because you can feel more tension on one side, and you can then work with the robozo to release that. I work with the robozo to bind women's bellies as well. Sometimes the robozo is more appropriate than the faja. At times during a challenging birth, if a baby is not in an optimal position and that there are things arising in that labor and birth, and that woman is seeking support for that variation of that labor, then that's when I'll utilize it. So it's not something that I use across the board for birth at all. It's only if something arises, particularly in situations where like waters break before labor starts and the baby's in a posterior position. If you have the skills and knowledge in order to be able to support a woman in that process to get the baby in a more optimal position so she can go into labor herself and avoid intervention, if that is your intention of why you're working with this, then that is honoring what it is. I use it as well for postpartum.
So during pregnancy, they engage in a lot of massage in the steam rooms.
Yeah, it's called a temescal.
Temescal. And then what do they do, uniquely for postpartum?
Cultures across the world have the same intention, but different ways about going about it. Your listeners may know more commonly about like the closing of the bone ceremony, which we think is just done at like 6 weeks postpartum, is to close off that period. But actually, like traditionally, it's done every few days, and it incorporates massage, heat, a lot of heat, steam, the woman sweating, and then closing the bones with a robozo, like literally physically like bringing the bone, the structural body like back together. And the Mayan midwives who I learn with do something similar as well, but they kind of do it all at the same time within the temescal. So you're doing the massage and the plant baths. You're working with intentional plants in the steam, in the temescal. I've had the beautiful privilege of being able to facilitate that for one of the midwives after she had a baby in Guatemala. She was having a challenging time and the baby wasn't putting on a lot of weight and she didn't have a lot of milk. And she had some things around her birth that she was holding. And in that experience, and what I've witnessed now when I recreate that experience in my closing ceremonies, that women sometimes revert back to that in labor space, especially with the steam. The temescal, it's like, crawling into the womb. It's a very, very small little door that you have to go into, and it's very dark inside, and it's very warm and it's very steamy. You throw like plant water like on the heat. So it is kind of like this womb space. So it can often like put women back into that kind of like labor, vocalizations, big, wide, glassy eyes. Yeah, we like sing and drum inside to sort of like help keep all the energy moving. And we massage the woman's body. We use salt as like a cleansing to sort of clear the energy and the healing properties of the plants as well. Through that experience, at the end, she was like leaking milk. We opened the door and like let it cool down a little bit, and she bathed her baby inside and they feed the baby inside. And it was a really, really beautiful experience. And I was just like, every single woman needs to experience this. Yeah, we spoke about how I'm a businesswoman now and I'm going to make some money, and this is my goal to build something like this to share. But ultimately, like what I do now is I just create like a little steam tent. But I have been able to do it once in Australia with someone a dear sister who had a lodge at the house.
That was going to be my question, is how do we create something like this thing? Yeah, heat and steam is such a big part of so many wellness practices around the world.
And we tell women here during pregnancy not even to have like a hot bath. But in other countries, like my sister-in-law, she's pregnant again. Actually, I'm going to be going back to Europe and supporting her for her upcoming birth. But even by like in the hospital system, they're told to go to the saunas during their pregnancy. And there's even ways that you can build the sauna. Some cultures have really strict practices around how to build and conduct the steam lodges and sweat lodges, and some are done more intentionally with ceremony. But when you have the intention of working with it for pregnancy, labor and birth and family care, you build them slightly differently. You don't make them as hot. It's not about like, this like push uncomfortability, like having these big release experiences. It's about supporting the body. So when she's pregnant, you don't make it as hot, and you can build them in ways that, have more doors or can be taller. So the women actually can birth in them as well. But yeah, incredible for postpartum healing, or for anyone really. Like, yeah, I also do a lot when I'm over there.
Sarah, you are in a position then to help broaden midwives' knowledge, and you're actually offering a workshop in Guatemala where midwives can experience some of the learning that you've experienced. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's actually open to everyone. So when I learned the Mayan abdominal massage, we did it as a workshop and it was a 7-day kind of experience. And then last year was the first time that I connected with the midwives there and co-create with them a retreat experience. So it's a being fed beautiful organic food in the sacred Lake Atitlan, which is this lake in Guatemala that's surrounded by volcanoes. It's a very potent area. We learn these practices, but in a way that we learn through experiencing, which is how you always learn with the Mayan midwives. Like what I recognize even when I come to teach them, like they will just tell stories. And when you learn through experiencing, that knowledge sinks in on like a deeper cellular level because you understand how that practice feels. You don't need to be a midwife or even want to utilize this in your practice, but it's incredibly beneficial for particularly women working with women around birth. But we have a retreat coming up. We are offering that again. So we are just waiting to confirm some dates, but we're hoping it's going to be in February next year, but it's on my website. So if you sign up to my email list, you'll be like the first to learn about it. I am very close to securing the dates. So yeah, you can come and learn with us and learn through experiencing and sit in ceremony with the midwives and just hear their incredible stories as well. I do have a recording from the last retreat where one of the midwives who actually creates the fahas for us, she shares her story as well. So a little glimpse of the sorts of things that you can be exposed to, I can share.
So you would be with the Guatemalan midwives who taught you and be facilitating a week-long retreat.
Yeah, it's a whole week.
So approximately February 2025. So we'll put all the details in the show notes. And can you remind us what the name of the project is?
The Midwife Project.
Midwife Project. It's in the show notes. We're going to continue tapping into Sarah's knowledge in the next episode of The Great Birth Rebellion, where we're going to learn all about the practice of belly binding. And Sarah's going to teach us what she learned. I found a little bit of research about this, so I can give a touch of information from that perspective. So we will see you in the next episode of The Great Birth Rebellion.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you. Thank you for being here for today's episode of The Great Birth Rebellion podcast. If you want to get access to all the resources that we use to create every single podcast episode, you can join the mailing list at melaniethemidwife.com. Or better still, the Premium Members Hub. Premium members get access to transcripts, the Ask Mel a Question button, an exclusive Ask Me Anything episode every month. All the details are in the show notes, and I will see you in the next episode of The Great Birth Rebellion.